Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Sunday Gemcutting Conversations. If you've never been here before, welcome. My name is Justin K. Prim, and I will be your host for this evening. Hopefully, you have been with us before. If not, welcome if it's your first time. Very excited about today's talk. We're going to be talking with Boyd Fox. If you have been with us, maybe you know already that this is the 10th month in a row. Every time I look at this slide, I'm like, oh my God, time goes by so fast. But yeah, so we've been talking to gem cutters now for 10 months, and we're going to keep on talking to gem cutters for more months. And I hope everybody is ready and comfortable, and you have either your maybe your bowl of breakfast cereal or maybe your popcorn if it's late at night, as it is for me. So yeah, we're going to be talking with Boyd. I'm excited for this one. I don't know Boyd that well. I think we met in Tucson last year, and I was really impressed with his cutting skills. He did a demonstration of recutting for the Faceter's Frolic in the Tucson show. And then since then, I've just been hearing his name popping up everywhere on social media as kind of the guy that everyone likes to reference in the world of American cutting. So I was like thinking, wow, we got to get Boyd Fox on here just to talk about what he's doing and what his whole thing is about. So I'm super psyched that he said yes. And, as usual, I'm just constantly grateful and humbled by all the people that have given their time to come on to this show and just, talk to us for a while and give us the dirty details of their life and their business and all the cool stuff that they do in the realm of gem cutting. So that being said, let's get going. Boyd, if you're ready, come on in and we'll get the party going.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing great, actually. Doing really good.
So you are in Denver, right?
I'm in Denver, Colorado. Yep, right in the middle of the USA.
So you're like on almost the perfect opposite side of the earth than me right now.
Right.
Well, how's it going?
It's going really good. The COVID thing was a little bit of a scare for everybody around the world, but it actually was a blessing for me because I saw a lot of jewelers kind of got stuck at home and they started going through their inventory and they wanted all these gemstones that they had just put in a box to get repaired. So actually during COVID, I just got slammed with work and it's still not over yet. I'm just super busy and I'm super happy and I'm just cranking along. So yeah, I'm doing really good.
That's awesome. I feel you. We had the same experience here where it seemed like suddenly you could tell everybody was suddenly online a lot more. We were getting more traffic in Instagram, more messages, more packages. And I wish everyone could say the same because I know some people, especially here in Bangkok, have had a rough year. The gemstone dealers, I think, have not had the same experience.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So, but, for some of us, for the cutters, at least, I know all the cutters I know have had an amazing, just really a lucky time. And the rough dealers too. I know the rough dealers are moving things like crazy.
Right. Yeah. Well, everybody had time to sit at home and cut. So, why not, So yeah, it seemed to work out really good. So I was not really happy with the pandemic, but from a business point of side and what I do, it was almost a blessing. So honestly.
Okay. Well, glad to hear it. Glad you're in a good space for us today. For you, it's morning. You just woke up. So you're like, oh, ready to go.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. Let's go.
Okay. Well, give us a little story here. So you're Boyd Fox. You're in Denver. Right. How did you become Boyd Fox in Denver? How did you become the gem cutter that everybody's always mentioning on Facebook?
Okay. Yeah, I don't really know all the answers to that. I know I started cutting realistically 10 years ago, but technically 15 years ago. I had kind of two big wow moments when it came to cutting. The first one was the first time I saw somebody cut a gemstone from the rough, and it really kind of blew my mind, and it almost looked like magic. And I was just like, I got to figure out how to do that. It's crazy. So I bought an Ultratech off of eBay, downloaded GemCAD, to design, and I was a diagram cutter. That's how I started cutting. I did that for about 4 or 5 years, and then I met up with my mentor. His name's Ron Pingeno, and whole lots of wow moments there. But he really actually kind of took me under his wing and said, I'm going to really teach you how to cut without diagrams, and we'll go through all this very methodically. And it was a long process, and God bless him, he was exceptionally patient with me. It took about 5 or 6 more years of cutting without a diagram and starting to understand how to really cut for real. And that's how I kind of developed that. Because of that, what's happened is that I get really expensive gemstones to cut now, and I have a pretty good reputation. So I don't know, how I mentioned, online and everything. I don't really know. I just kind of just do my thing, but it just kind of panned out, I guess,
Yeah.
So
well, it's always in a positive light. That's for sure. So
okay, that's
were
great.
you already in the gem trade or in any aspect of the gem and jewelry trade before that?
No, I believe it or not, I was a carpenter. I built houses. I was a framing contractor, and I did that from age 17. That's just kind of what I was born and bred to do. But then the economy crashed in 2008, and I couldn't build. I mean, it went from building a huge mansion to I couldn't even get somebody to let me, build a little deck or a fence. It's just construction just completely stopped for a long time. And I said, I have to retool. I have to come up with another trade that I can fall back on. And, when I started cutting, I thought maybe eventually I'd get back into construction, but the cutting has taken off so well. It's like, do I really want to go and get splinters and sunburn all day? Not really. So
Okay.
I'd rather sit in nice air conditioning and do my thing. So,
Yeah. And so who was the first person that you saw cut? Was it just like a random moment?
no, it was actually, this is a little bizarre. It was my cousin, and he does lapidary, but he's mostly into intarsia inlay, cabochons, and things like that. But he facets just a little bit. And I actually owned a pizza joint at this time as well. So I got dog hair all over me. It's just everywhere. But I owned a pizza joint, and he was actually working for me at my pizza joint. And he brought down this rough and he faceted it, and it totally blew me away. And like I said, and I actually, when I started faceting, was in my pizza joint. I had my faceting machine set up in the office in the pizza joint. I'd go and make a pizza and then run back and lay another facet on. So my beginning was a little rocky, and I had the weirdest pizza joint on the planet because eventually I didn't care about making food. I just wanted to sit in the office and cut rocks. And eventually it finally all clicked that, hey, maybe I can do that. And I did. So yeah,
That's cool.
but it was weird. Totally weird.
Yeah, that's a weird way. I worked in a couple pizza shops too. That's not a bad way to do it. You always have some
Right.
food. But yeah, I think maybe you have done the right choice here as the gem cutters.
For sure.
So just to think about where you are geographically, I haven't really spent much time in Denver, but is there much of a jewelry scene out there, or is your customers other places?
We're kind of an island here. That's obviously changing with the internet and being able to ship things around. So, but Denver has always kind of been considered like an island, a metropolitan area just out in the middle of nowhere, essentially. The closest city is, the big city is, in Utah, or, the other direction out in Kansas. And I wouldn't even consider it's actually a couple states away, go in the other direction. So it's, so we're kind of an island. So we're all here. We all kind of know each other very well. There's not very many cutters actually in Denver, exactly anyway, but we have the Denver Gem Show, which is pretty weird. So we have a big gem show that kind of comes in typically in September. So we kind of get like this injection of gem stuff, rough and cutters kind of show up. And so it's there's a kind of a scene here, but it's pretty underground. So,
Okay.
but yeah.
So I imagine then maybe during that season, are you getting really busy as people are getting ready to showcase, or is it always kind of consistent?
I'm pretty consistently busy now all the time. I see big hits obviously before Christmas. Actually, the month of December is usually kind of my slower time because I have to have everything cut back to the jewelers because they're making wedding rings and engagement rings and all that stuff. So, they need time to get that all processed for Christmas. So I'm usually kind of ahead of when those big bumps hit. actually in December, right before Christmas, is when I start getting my Tucson stuff, which all the, the gym dealers that need stuff fixed up or whatever for Tucson, that's kind of when they start sending me stuff. So it really just kind of folds one thing into the next, into the next. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I'm just really consistently busy pretty much.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit, one thing that I'm always curious about as an American who's never really been a gym cutter living in America. Like I moved to Bangkok almost immediately after I started cutting.
Okay.
What's the lifestyle like? I mean, you're telling us a little bit, but just in terms of like, are all your customers like American customers? Are they jewelers, or do you also do directly to like the end customer as well?
I do a little bit of everything. So, yeah, so I have clients all around the world. It's really just, kind of funnels around, especially the big expensive gemstones, kind of bebopping around, but, eventually they somehow kind of end up on my bench somehow, um, either through brokers or dealers or whatever. I mostly deal with jewelry businesses and jewelers because I really don't like spending the time explaining a whole lot to just the end user, the final client. You almost have to double the amount of time it takes to do any one job when you're dealing with them, because you have to explain what you're doing. Say a heat treated sapphire, they want to know what heat treatment means, so you have to talk through all that stuff, and that's fine, except when you deal with jewelers, they kind of generally know that information, so it's a lot quicker. You don't, when you cut for the end user, you can make a lot of money per stone, but they're very few and far between.
Mm-hmm.
But when you cut for a business, you make much less money, but you get really consistent work and you're busy all the time. So, there's wins and losses with everything. But I just like working with jewelers because it seems to be the easy, the path of least resistance. I let them deal with the consumer, let them spend their time talking it up, and let me just do my work, and we all win. So yeah.
So then does it end up being a lot of recuts, or are you cutting a lot of rough as well?
I'm cutting, I do about 50-50. I love recutting the most. That's like my most favorite thing to do, which is kind of bizarre for a lot of cutters. But I just I love that challenge. And I love when you're doing a recut, you kind of have to figure out what was done to it originally and why did they do that. So you're kind of learning as you're doing it, because you're figuring out what they did, and then you're manipulating what they did to what you want, or, removing damage or fixing the light or whatever's going on. So it's a challenge, and I like that challenge. But I do about 50-50. So I cut rough too. The weird thing is I don't ever cut any of my own stuff. I haven't cut my own stuff in years, and I cut 10 stones every day. It seems like 1,000 stones plus a year. And I have a whole pile of gemstones that I wanted to improve, or rough that I bought, and I don't know when I get to it. I guess that's what retirement's for. I don't know. So
or like Christmas week when you got nothing else to do.
Yeah,
something like that.
So yeah.
So then, do you advertise your services, or people just hear you like word of mouth?
So as a cutter, I think the most important thing, the most valuable asset as a cutter to me, is actually your reputation. That will get you more work than anything else you do. If you have good people talking about you in a positive light to other people that might need that service, that's great advertising. You don't have to pay for it, and it actually gets results. So I spend a lot of time just protecting my reputation. But I don't really advertise, actually. I kind of just show people a little bit of what I do on Facebook, and it's somewhat interesting, I suppose, and it's weird. I've cut a pool ball, I've cut a Jolly Rancher once, just why not? To have fun, and those weird things kind of get attention, and I'm just having a good time, so why not do it? But those things actually make a good impression, and then just being a smart, good guy helps, reputation wise.
Well, I know when I saw you do that recutting presentation in Tucson, I was so impressed because, well, first of all, I was impressed because from the general feeling that I get from American cutters in social media, there's not there's not a ton of people that do recutting anyway. Like a lot of people are a little bit intimidated by it. But then when I saw you do it, I was like, whoa, this dude's really fast. Like I was kind of shocked. Like, wow, he's faster than most people that I've seen. Like he's just shooting up the quill up and down, like, whoa.
Right.
So
yeah. I mean, I play the drums, so I'm really used to kind of like molding man and machine. I mean, I've been doing that since I was a toddler. So, you know, playing with the machine is just second nature to me anyway. But it was really Ron teaching me how to cut without a diagram, really like quadrupled my speed. What I used to be able to do as a diagram cutter in 2 hours now takes me 15 minutes or maybe half an hour tops. It's just, it's amazing how fast you can go. And really, that's like the most crucial thing I think with cutting is everyone can produce a perfect stone. Even commercial overseas cutters they could easily bang out a perfect stone if they had the time. So time is really something that a lot of cutters don't actually think about. And as a professional, you know, I have people's goods and I got to get them moved. You know, they expect them on time or they have a big sale waiting. So it's a lot of time is just my biggest crunch. And it's, you know, it's something that I have to work with. So even something as simple as dopping a gemstone, you know, yeah, you can super glue it and wait 5 minutes, but I'm halfway done cutting the stone already because I use wax. So, you know, it's like every procedure through cutting, it's actually how efficient can you do it? You're still going to get you still have to hit a result that you're going for, a target, but how fast can you do it correctly? So I spent years with Ron and myself just, you know, really analyzing every aspect to try to keep that time, you know, to knock that time down on every project. So that's like a huge thing I worry about.
So when you were kind of apprenticing with Ron, was he working as a professional cutter as well?
Actually, yeah. He's a phenomenal cutter. He's been cutting for well over 60 years. He's done some of the biggest, most awesome, mind-blowing stuff you can imagine. And he's got stories forever. He was one of the first peoples to actually, the first dealer to bring colored cut faceted gemstones to Tucson. And everybody laughed at him and said, you know, none of these people want faceted stones. They just want mineral specimens and fossils. And, you know, that was 40 years ago. And look where it's gone. You know, he helped start AGTA as a, you know, entity. And so he's just been around forever. So he's been a professional cutter all of his life, essentially. And so that's one of the biggest things is I learned so much from him, not just cutting, but, you know, how to do business deals and the etiquette and, you know, the history and just everything. It's just, and we talk about, I mean, he's one of my best friends now. We just, you know, some random subject, you know, like how does light move through a tweening plane and a crystal? And that's our lunch conversation. And we talk about all this weird stuff. So, you know, it's just, you just learn all the time when I'm around him. So it's great.
So good. It's so lucky. I really feel like having a mentor, you know, I mean, wherever you are in your trajectory, the mentor just basically shoots you up. Like,
right. Yeah.
You know, without that, it's so long. And then some stuff I just feel like you can never learn, you know, like even hearing you talk about, you know, your approach to recutting in Tucson. And I was just like, because I remember you were saying like, you know, for you, it's all about closing the window. And then however those new facets meet the old facets around the girdle, it doesn't really matter because nobody can see it. And I was just like, okay, like not that I was shocked that you said that, but it's more like the permission that that's acceptable in the trade. You know what I mean? Because so many people are just like, it must be every line must meet the girdle perfect, you know, whatever.
Right. You know, that's the big difference between diagram cutting, honestly, and like cutting. My version of cutting, I kind of call it hybrid cutting. And what that means is, you know, we take the precision and the tooling and the polishing, you know, the really good diamond and everything of the precision diagram cutter. But then we add in the speed and the weight retention of the commercial cutter. And then what Ron and I do kind of differently than a lot of other cutters is we actually apply all this crazy, weird science to it. Like we really analyze, you know, electrons and, you know, and how light moves through materials. And we really just like overthink things actually. but it's actually super fun because I learn a lot. And, but we really start to understand how the light's moving through a stone. And then as we're making up our cut on the fly, we're applying all this, this, and this. We apply it all together to produce a perfect stone. And I actually cut differently for different sellers. I always ask them typically, or I just know them because they're regular clients, but how are you presenting the stone? Are you putting it in jewelry? I cut one way. Are you putting it online? I cut it differently. And even online do you hold it in tweezers? Do you hold it in your hand? Or is it on a rotating thing? I cut each one of those. I cut an actual different way because at the end of the day, it's how is that stone presented to the end user? That's what you need to cut for. Cutting just to make a perfect stone is actually pretty easy to do if you have a lot of time and you want to do that. So that's not really challenging. It's not challenging at all. It's actually manipulating what you're doing to the current situation. And then that's challenging, and you got to really communicate with your client on what's going on. So, but it gets really fun. I have a blast doing what I do because every stone's different and there's no one like recipe. I literally, like, I treat an oval differently than a round, differently than a cushion. And then they have all the materials and different hues and all this stuff. So just kind of, I have all these millions and millions of little tricks and cues and things I have to, realize. And I kind of, I analyze it all and make up one little recipe that only works for that stone. The next stone, totally different. I start all over again. So it's fun. It's a blast.
So talk to us a little bit. So you said you started with the diagrams, and then through your mentorship, you've kind of created this professional hybrid approach. Talk to us a little bit about that. Like for anybody who's going to be watching this as either if they're a beginner or an advanced diagram cutter who wants to go to the next level, whether that means just professional or just getting rid of the diagram, like what does it take to be able to do that?
Well, there's consequences for everything. Like diagram cutting, I kind of like dog on it, if you will, a little bit online. I'm kind of known for that, and that's fine. But the reality is it's actually a beautiful tool, and it's a gateway into the faceting world. So somebody with very little knowledge or no knowledge at all can actually cut a really good, sellable, beautiful stone really easy with diagram cutting. So I love it for that fact. It got me hooked on it. So, all homage to diagram cutting, right? But if that's your only tool, if that's what you use to cut, I don't know. I know there are people that are professional as diagram cutters, but man, I can imagine that is a struggle that I would never take on. I mean, and so non-diagram cutting, what it takes to learn it is actually a whole lot of time and a whole lot of effort. And that's the consequence for learning it. I almost went like full Shaolin monk when I started to learn this. When Ron showed me this, I like evaporated everything, like I didn't go out on dates. I didn't go to shows. I didn't watch TV. I didn't, watch movies. It was complete, utter laser beam focus on how to do this. And not only did I have Ron teaching me kind of step by step through the process, it doesn't really matter if you get taught it. If you don't apply it to what you're doing, it's just useless information. So what I had to do was I had to cut a lot, and I would just cut all the time, 14, 16 hours a day, I would be cutting. And that experience is really what matters here. It's like the more you do it, the way better you're going to get. So even then I have like a slight weird advantage over diagram cutters because I cut 10 stones in a day. Well, a diagrammer will cut maybe one or two. Well, think about just that experience knowledge gained over a week or a month or a year. In a year, I'm theoretically 10 times better because I cut 10 times more stuff and I learned 10 times more stuff than trying to cut a diagram on each and every stone. So there's really great benefits to it, but it's really just how well can you focus on it and apply it. And it's hard at first. It takes a long time. I've been asked, like every week I get asked to give, classes, take students or whatever. And I've kind of always said no, because I'm just so busy, right? And it's really hard for me to like kind of figure out how would I teach somebody this, because I can't sit down with them for 5 or 6 years and teach them. And I got to thinking about it. How I learned with Ron was very kind of random. Like it was just, you run into a problem and then he would work me through it. And it was up to me to kind of run into those problems. And at first there was, how do you dop a stone? Like it was, like lots of problems right to begin with. But then as time got on, the problems got less and less and less. So now I've kind of focused back and looked back and went through all that experience. And I've actually come up with a really good curriculum that I've written that I'm going to actually start taking on students and giving classes. Cool. And it's really thought out. I spent about a year, like really analyzing how I learned and what order things would be learned on, like what's the best way to learn. And I'm not going to be just taking like any students. I really want students that, have a really good understanding of cutting to begin with. And, they're really dedicated. They're good, honest people, because if I take them on as a student, I kind of look at it as like really long-term, like we're going to have a relationship for the rest of our lives. And so I want them, so I need the right student for it, but I am going to be starting to offer those classes. I'm kind of getting some other things going, but probably like hopefully by the end of the year or so, I'll be taking on a few select students to start to teach this stuff too. So
that sounds awesome. I'm always excited when people are teaching more because we need more cutters.
Right. Yeah, we do need more cutters. So, like I said, before I used to always say no to taking on students. Now I just want to say that the opportunity is coming and, but it's going to be really for the dedicated. Like if you want to become a professional cutter and be successful at it, like that's kind of what I'm looking for a student. So I'm going to hand pick some students, but yeah.
That's super cool. So I'm curious then. So if working mostly with jewelers, do you find yourself cutting like really the traditional type cuts? Are you kind of making a little bit of wild, things in the stuff that you're cutting?
Right. So mostly what I do is I do recuts a lot. Cutting rough stuff, I'm usually just, it's usually expensive rough. So I'm kind of like, the client says, make it weigh as much as possible. It's like I've never heard that one before, like really? Okay. Yeah, so most jewelers want, normal shaped stones so they can put it in jewelry. It's easy to sell, so ovals, rounds, traditional shaped stones. So the really zany stuff, I don't really do a whole lot of because it's just hard. Those are hard sells. So, but sometimes I do just because I'm having fun. But so with recuts, it's mostly on the really expensive stuff. You don't have freedom. If I were to take, a 20 karat cashmere sapphire, which is worth $2 or $3 million, and cut it perfectly like a diagram cut, I would be killed. I would literally end up in a hole out in the desert because I would have lost so much value, to that stone. I would have actually ruined the stone. That's like a hack job on a stone like that. So what I do is I have to, manipulate the light just right. I obviously spend tons of time on the crown and make it perfect because when it's put in jewelry, that's what the client sees. So, and that's, if you're selling at Christie's or Sotheby's, that's the photo, have you ever seen an upside down, ruby in one of those auction sites? No, because, I can guarantee you they're bizarre.
Yeah.
I've done some of them, it's like, they're just wacky, weird stuff and nobody sees it. So nobody cares. So it's all about how it faces up. And so you have to kind of understand all this as you're going through it and it's a lot to learn. I mean, you got to know, Ron said a good cutter knows when not to cut on this kind of stuff. And I learned that the hard way a few times, but I did learn. And now I know when not to cut. So, yeah.
No, it's good. So then, what do you think? I'm always curious to talk to American cutters because I know that there's a bias towards brilliant cuts, but are you doing a lot of step cut pavilions or how do you approach?
Yeah. So brilliant cuts are very trendy right now. And it's, it's a lot of the, just that concept of if it looks really bright, it's got to be a good stone. Not the case. Brilliant cuts eat up a ton of weight. I mean, they are monsters when it comes to chewing up weight. So, like I said, on an expensive stone, if you put a brilliant cut on it, unless it just happened to be shaped in a way that made sense to do that, which is very few and far between. But you know, if it happened to be that way and you could pull it off, great, that's wonderful. But the step cut is really prime time for expensive goods. Just because you can save a lot of weight. It really looks brilliant actually with all the little step cuts going around. If you do it right, it can look really sharp, especially a mixed cut on the crown. So yeah, so I mostly do step cuts on the back. So, and then brilliant cuts on the crown. That's kind of my, you know, just because that's just what I cut. So
yeah, same here. I'm just curious because you never know. I'm just every time I meet an American cutter, I'm just like, ooh, what school are you in? You know, are you fastening the girdles? Are you so speaking of, are you freehanding shapes when you're if you get the chance to make the shape?
Right. Yeah. So fastening a girdle to me on a shape that has a rounded profile, like a pear or a heart or, you know, a round or something, fastening the girdle is one, it takes a lot of time. It eats up weight. And essentially the jewelers don't like it because they have a sharp edge then to bend a prong over, and their chances of chipping that stone are greatly increased. So I free form it, with my hand on all rounded, you know, stone. But like if it's an Asher cut or an emerald cut, you know, something that has square sides, I just facet that. And I never dead stop my machine, you know, like I cut to actually what I'm looking at. You know, I just, no, I don't have a diagram. I just write everything in my book as I go. And actually, like the non-diagram cutting, the way I do it is I'm cutting with a diagram, but I'm making up the diagram as I go. And if you start with a diagram, you're forcing the stone into that diagram. And what I'm doing is I'm forcing the diagram around that stone. And there's, like I said, it's really fast and I save tons of weight. So my average return on rough, I'm really a big like data collector guy. So everything I cut goes into a database so I can see, you know, how many stones I cut, what, you know, weight return is. And my average is about 50% on rough now. So a fifth, you know, anywhere between 40 and 60 is normal for me. I really shoot for 50. And for me, a failure, or I feel bad, or there was a big, you know, something really wrong with that stone that would cause me to go under 50%. But 50% to me is I go, okay, I did okay, you know.
That's
so
really good.
And diagram cutters, you know, they can go anywhere from 0 to 30, you know, like they think a 30% return. And that's literally all that is forcing a stone into a diagram versus forcing a diagram around a stone. It's just a different thought process.
Yeah. Okay, well, somebody asked the question. I had the same question too. Can we talk a little bit technical? Like, what machine and laps are you using to do this kind of work?
Okay, so my main lap that I use is a cheap little topper, 1200. This is my workhorse. This is my, you know, this is almost. I start with this on recuts and cutting rough generally after preforming, and they're cheap, they're easy. I wear it in actually, usually on corundum so it's not so aggressive, but that's what I start with. And then I just, honestly, every stone, whether it's a super soft stone to a hard stone, I polish generally with diamond on bat. And I don't really change that up. And the reason for that is I know the outcome of those polishes on different materials. So it's very, very predictable for me. So I can really get a really good polish. I mean, even on quartz, which everybody has a problem with quartz, I just do, 1,000 on bat, and it takes a long time, but it's very predictable. And, I can get nice, sharp, crisp facets and all that stuff. My machine is,
super machine.
I use an old Seattle facet machine.
Oh, wait, something weird happened. Now we can't hear you anymore.
All right.
Oh, now I can hear you. Okay. I guess you have to be close.
So I use an old Seattle facet machine. They're very easy to manipulate, and they're essentially like, I'll go back here. They're essentially like a really precise jam peg machine. So can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good now.
Okay. All right. I don't know if there's something weird about
talking right at the computer.
Okay. That seems to work. Okay. So a Seattle machine is like a really precise jam peg. And what I mean by that is I can tweak left and right just a little bit. I can go up and down, and I can really kind of mold things in just right. And it's very easy to use. You know, it's one of the, even the Gym Masters too, the Facet Gym Masters too. They actually have a lock on there. They kind of juiced them up and pimped them out with accessories that don't help. You know, I know they look good, and they you know, it's very visually awesome, but it's actually a detriment. And so I actually like the old faceting machines because they're just basic. They do the job, and they do it really, really well. So yeah.
Well, I remember you saying in Tucson, like the first thing that you did was cut off the meter.
Yeah, the meter. Yep. Yeah, that cord is just an umbilical cord to failure is what that cord is. So yeah, you know, a lot of people, you know, diagram cutters especially, they rely on the machine to cut, you know, to force them to cut a perfect zone. So that's why I'm saying with a dead stop, and then they, you know, go 180 and they dead stop, and they're thinking that, you know, and so they really are concerned with how tuned in their machine is. I don't care. I mean, I couldn't care less. You know, I keep the maintenance up on the machine to keep it running, but as far as how calibrated it is or whatever, I have no idea. Because I'm actually just cutting what I'm seeing on the stone, and I just lay in my facets as I see fit. So I don't rely on the machine whatsoever. In fact, I can jump off this machine. I have other machine at the shop. This is my home machine. You know, I have another machine at the shop, and they're totally different. The same exact kind of machine, but they all have their own weird little unique things. And I find that it really has no bearing on how I'm doing or slows me down or nothing, because I'm just, it's the process of how I cut. So I just cut at what I'm looking at. So
yeah, no, it's really inspiring. I think to me, tell me if you agree with this, but to me, when I kind of switched over from, you know, diagram cutting into just cutting, what I realized was the big thing that changes is instead of looking at those meters, suddenly you really just start looking at the stone. Like you just look at the stone.
Yeah. So that's the speed thing, you know, like with not having to do diagram cutting, you're not looking at your diagram. So your eyes are, you know, your eyes shift away if you look at a diagram and back, you know, all the time. You got to find where you are, and then try to match that up with, like, how is that facet going to look on, you know, you try to match it up with a picture, you know, and you do all this weird stuff. So your brain is actually, it's not focused on the stone, then you're focused on the diagram. And same with the meter, you know, you're trying to get the meter to hit right every time. You lose focus. The focus, you know, it's not on the stone, now it's on the meter. Sorry, I'm not used to talking this much. I've just kind of cut all day.
You just woke up anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, the speed part is just focusing on the stone, and you kind of get in this matrix after a while where I write everything down kind of for my protection, but really it's all in my head as I'm cutting it. And I mean the entire thing. So when I get to polishing it, for the most part, I just zoop, and I know right where I'm going. And I don't even look at my book anymore because I just figured it out. It's just there, you know, for my protection essentially. So yeah.
So that machine doesn't have any kind of hard stop. It just hits the lap whenever it hits the lap.
No, it does have a hard stop. Let me move this, and I'll try to explain loudly how this works. So if you can't hear me, just let me know. So how it works?
No, I don't know why. As soon as you turn it that way, it doesn't.
All right.
Okay, I think we can hear you.
Mic apparently. So here's the hard stop right here.
I think if you talk at the machine, that seems to work. If you're looking at this side of the, yeah,
like that works here.
Yeah, I can hear you now. That's good.
Okay. So let me say that all over again without looking at you. This is the hard stop. It's just a pin here. This is actually also where the meter would technically go to, but I cut it off. So so this is the sensor for a gauge. These machines did come with gauges, but you don't need them. So the hard stop stops there, and then how I actually control my cutting is I raise the mast up and down.
Okay.
So as I drop this down, I cut, and then I back it out, and now I'm not cutting.
Oh wait, we lost you again.
Move over to the next thing. and do the same thing down and then back up. So
We
that's
lost
the
the
whole
voice
thing.
again. I don't know what
And
happened.
then you can just, you can go down to any angle you want, and I cut, and I lift it up, and then if I go, oh, that's a little too shallow, I want to go a little steeper, I can just crank it up, just that much, and I'm cutting steeper now, so I can really set this at anything, and I can creep, I can creep down as I'm cutting, if I'm trying to like draw in a break facet or whatever, I just slowly go down until I'm cutting right. So I'm really using the stone to figure out what angle I'm cutting at. I'm not using the machine, to really cut the stone, if that makes sense. It's kind of a weird thing.
Okay, we got like half that. I think it made some sense. You're using
Okay.
you're using the machine to cut the stone, not just staring at the gauge all the time. You
Right. Yeah. 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 I drop it down in elevation and cut and then raise it up every time. And as that draws the facet out, that's how I control the stone in that three-dimensional space. So it's just it's a machine to let me control the stone in three-dimensional space, which is what all faceting machines do, except I'm not relying on the machine and its calibration to do that. It's just kind of on the user to do that.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the cool thing that ends up happening when you make that transition is like what starts going on in your brain. Like you start seeing the geometry, and because, like you said, instead of focusing on the diagram, the diagram becomes in your head, and you can see how all the facets are forming and what's
Right.
going to happen. You know exactly what's going. You can predict everything
Right. Yeah.
once you got that.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you get it, it's like I know how the stone's going to look upside. You're cutting it upside down. You're cutting the pavilion. When you flip it over, I know how it's going to look ahead of time because one, a lot of experience, but you also understand exactly. There's only like two different ways to put a flat facet on a machine or on a stone and have them meet. There's only two ways. You can either do a brilliant, or you can do a step cut, or you can mix the two. So it's actually kind of easy, and the results are pretty predictable. The one thing that I really wanted to help people, like try to encourage people to do, was actually do recuts, because I learned so much of doing there's actually, might look random, but there's really usually a mathematical reason why they do everything on a stone. So and we're talking old cut stones or commercially cut stones, there's actually a reason to it. And once you figure that out, my eyes now are super trippy. I can actually look at a faceted stone, and I pretty much can tell you what every angle is and what every index is, almost to within a half a degree. And the indexes are pretty easy. The angles are, but like I can just see it now, and that really helps when I do a recut, because I don't have to figure out much. I just go, oh, that looks really steep. I bet it's like a 25, and sure enough, it's a 24 and a half. Main. And then I'm off to the races. So, being able to really sight that stuff in quickly helps out with speed too. So,
Yeah, no, for
yeah,
sure. So
it's a
what do you?
lot of experience to get there.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think, aside from just being fast and of course gaining the experience of how to cut the stone, what other things do people need to know in order to succeed if they want to, be working as a professional?
So, yeah, so the biggest thing is going from a hobbyist to a professional. And I truly did. I went from, a hobbyist diagram cutter to a professional cutter. It's not only, you have to understand that you're a manufacturer, and so you have to manufacture good products quickly, but also all the other business aspects of it come into view, like great communication with your clients, protecting your reputation, being exceptionally well organized. I can't even stress enough, you got to be honest, you got to be trustworthy, you got to be reliable. Those are the things that create your reputation. And like I said, your reputation is what gets you work or makes you lose work. There's not very many people in this business, considering other, like aerospace industry or something like that, where there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people all over. We have a very actually relatively small group of people that facet and do this for a profession. And if you piss one of them off, everybody knows about it, like instantaneously. So you got to be honest, and you got to help each other. I try to help out cutters as much as I can. if they ask me a question or need advice, or I've even had some of them where they've gotten, like so backwards on a stone, and they're just, it's for a client and they're freaking out and they're not doing a good job. I'll just say, you know what? I can't really explain it all to you, but send it to me. I'll fix it up for you. And no charge, I'll get you out of this. And I do that. And, it saves their reputation, and it helps me too, because now they know that, hey, I'm a resource there that they can count on. And I actually want people to succeed. And that means you have to take risks. You have to, you can get you so used to cutting a 5-carat stone and be in that realm. Try cutting a 1/2-carat stone. Try cutting a 10-pointer. I can tell you right now, if you want to be a professional and be very successful, learn how to cut really small stones. There's not too many people doing it, and everybody wants it done. Like, I have jobs piled up of these little baguettes and stuff I have to cut, and they just keep coming in, and I keep doing them. And but that's a huge niche that if you can find a niche you can fall into and get really good at and be known as that guy, you'll be successful forever. So and you can find a niche like you can cut a certain material, Montana sapphires, sunstones, and just be known as that guy. Or you can cut different shapes. Like, I know a guy that just does brulettes. He's a great fastener. He can cut anything, but he cuts a hell of a lot of brulettes, and he's the brulette guy. And so, different shapes, materials, sizes, you could be the little stone guy, the big stone guy, but you have to be known as a niche. And you don't have to be there forever. It's just, that's your base platform to build a business off. Now you have an income that's reliable. You have a reputation that's reliable, and you're filling a niche. And then from that, you can start springboarding and doing other things, even more enjoyable things or whatever. But that's how I did it with doing recuts. I got known as the recut guy and the emerald guy. And then now I'm, fastening piles of alexandrite in periwinkle tourmalines and red beryls. It just kind of explodes, because you're just starting to get, it's a building process. So, but that's how it works. You have to get known as something and be good at it and reliable, and then you can progress. So,
I just imagine, I always sort of fantasize, like, if I was back in the States, I feel like anyone who doesn't live in the country, like if you have any jeweler around you, they need recuts sometimes. Like, you can always do some recuts for any jeweler, because they don't have any
recuts. Recuts are forever. Like, even if I recut a stone today, I can technically see that stone back in my shop in 10 years, because it was worn on a ring. It's all abraded again, and it's banned. It's like, it's like the never ending, process. So I'm guaranteed a job forever. Forever. It doesn't matter how good or bad the economy goes. People are always going to need recuts, and it's just, now, like, if you want to be a boutique cutter and cut custom stuff and create an art style and be an artist and everything, that's cool. But it's going to be hard. It's going to be a hard path. And there's some people that do it, and they're great at it, and I love them for doing it. But I also respect them for going, man, you took like the hardest way to do it. and you created a niche just for what you do. That's awesome. If you just want to pay the bills, which I have to pay the bills, I need a steady income, and that comes from me cutting for jewelers. And I mostly do recuts because that's very consistent, and I'm good. And I love doing recuts. They're just a blast.
And they're fast. That's the fun thing about them. You can kind of just pop them out, and so anyone who can learn how to recut and then get fast, and then you figure out how fast you can go for however much you can charge for your area, and then as you said, you're set, because that job's never going to be over.
And you can always expand and grow, and you learn your reputation's on the line with every stone you cut. So every day, you put a stone on the stick, you got to understand that that's your reputation. Your whole business is on the line, and a lot of people think that like if I have a job to do, and let's say I have a 10-carat Burma ruby, and then I have a little, 0.5 by 0.5 millimeter baguette, emerald baguette I have to cut for client, and you go, well, which one's more important? Honestly, they're both the same importance, because they both are for jewelers my reputation's on the line just as much for one as the other. So I don't look at them any differently. In fact, the dollar value really doesn't even factor into my head as far as like, risk versus reward kind of a thing. I always understand that I got to, get as much value out of that stone as possible, whether it be a little tiny baguette or, which is, I'll spend lots of extra times to make a perfect meat point and polish and everything on that little teeny tiny stone that no one's ever going to look at other than the jeweler. I'll spend just as much time on that as a huge Burma ruby that's, going into Sotheby's or something. So that's just how I am, but it's important to know.
I respect that.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a bunch of questions from the audience that I've been ignoring, so let's do some of those. Okay, so Laura Acosta asks, do you think that, you starting as a diagram cutter helped, or do you think you could have just started as an on-the-fly cutter from the beginning?
Oh, that's a great question. I think like I said, the diagram cutter helped because it pulled me in. I was able to get success quickly with diagram cutting. I was able to get a win. I was able to produce a nice sellable stone. If I were to just try it off the cup, on the fly cutting from the beginning, I think I would have gotten so frustrated and it would have been so over my head that I would have quit and we wouldn't be talking now. So I think that's the right actual path is, that's why I like diagrams, because they do help beginner cutters get into this and get wins under their belt quickly. So, but don't stop there. Once you get the diagrams, just remember there's a whole lot more to learn. There's a lot more to learn after diagram cutting. So
I think, diagrams are cool because they give you something to visualize before you know the patterns yet. You can just look at it and say, this is what it should look like.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So it's a good basic understanding and how to operate a machine and how to lap, how to dop and all that stuff. That all kind of comes with the diagram cutting kind of process. But like I said, don't stop with just diagrams. Keep going. There's a lot more.
Yeah. Okay. So Alex Edwards asking about dopping techniques. He said, are you concerned about how centered the stone is on the dop, or does it matter since you're not cutting to the diagram?
Exactly. I'm not dead stopping cutting, with the meter. I'm not cutting with the diagram. I'm actually just using my eyes and I'm cutting exactly what I want, where I want. So I have complete artistic freedom within all the parameters of, the client set out or I set for myself for the stone. But I don't care. I mean, I can have it 80% off to one side of the dop stick. Doesn't matter to me. You can still produce a completely symmetrical, perfect stone because you're actually cutting the stone, and all the other stuff is kind of like errors that can happen that you have to rely on to not happen. But if you're just cutting the stone, you're the only error that can happen. So
true. And then Carrie Feefield asked about wax. Are you using a special wax for dopping, or is it just any wax?
I actually use just black dop wax for almost every stone I facet. And that's I get mine from Rio Grande. You can look it up there, but they seem to have really good wax. Melts at 175. Super easy to use. I can tell you, I got 2 pounds of it, which is 8 sticks, the big long sticks. And it takes me about 10 years to get through a stick. I just finished a stick. I almost did a huge press release, holy crap. I went through a whole stick of black dop wax. Amazing, and it took about 10 years. So if you get a pound of it with 4 sticks, you're good for decades. So, and I cut a lot and I use a lot of black wax all the time. And it still took me that long to get through a foot of it. So It's amazing stuff.
So this is my own question, but I'm curious as to your approach for emeralds, because this is something that I've been focused on a lot since COVID. I know a lot of people are really nervous about emeralds because of heating them and dopping them and potentially cracking them. Do you have a different dopping technique for emeralds, or you do the same?
Oh, exactly the same. Yeah, exactly the same. The problem with emeralds is most of the time they're oiled or filled. And if you dop with glue or epoxy, some of that oil will get into the stone, or the epoxy will get into the stone. Well, technically you just oiled that gemstone. Even when you take it off and you soak it off with a tack or acetone, you're actually making a solution of of epoxy or super glue and acetone, and that's seeping into the cracks of the stone. So you're oiling the stone. And now they're so sophisticated with detecting oil, they can find like one molecule of oil or filling, epoxy or super glue. So even if you have just one molecule in there, you get a minor oil cert, and on a really expensive emerald, that's a big hell of a deal. So, so wax though has pumice in it, which is a bigger material, which doesn't allow it to get into the cracks. So I know everybody freaks out about heat on gemstones, but it's really heat over time, how slowly you go. I mean, I'm going to be dopping up this, as soon as we got the phone, this is rhodochrosite. I'm going to be using black wax in heat, and I'm going to dop it up just fine. And, I'm not going to have any issues. I've cut a bunch of them, it's like,
yeah,
there's no issues with it. It's a technique. You got to learn it. It's experience, but it's easy to do. So
okay. I'm just curious.
So,
yeah, I mean, I've been doing the same, slightly heating emeralds, and it's never hurt. So I'm just wondering if other people are doing the same way. Okay, Michael Holmes asks, would you be able to cut as quickly with another machine such as a Facetron or something like that?
Yeah. Like I said, it's manufacturing, so you have to analyze every aspect of it. My machine has a great amount to do with my speed, but I did start to learn on my old Ultratech, which I have somewhere around here, somewhere in a box. But but I just found that machine tended to be a little bit slower and less user friendly. So than this one. So that's why I switched over to this one. And also, this was what my mentor was using, and he seemed to be just flying along. And I'm just like, well, he's been doing it for 60 years. You think if there was a better way, he would have figured it out by now. So, just lead by example. And I said, okay, I'll get one. And once I got used to it, it's super great. So I can cut much faster on versus diagram cutting. It's because that's a whole different process. But the machines do matter a little bit, and you have to maximize your time, on everything.
And I remember seeing you cutting in Tucson, and the thing that really impressed me with that machine was how the mast is weight balanced, so it springs back up when you let it go.
Yeah,
there's not
very
you
let go
that are like that.
And it's straight up. So you're not going to bounce the stone off of something, or it's not going to fall down and hit the lap and break the stone. So it's like I said, whoever designed it, they're awesome. They did a really good job because I love it. So but yeah.
Okay, Kimberly Straith asks again, what kind of machine are you using? It's a Seattle.
It's a Seattle fast set machine is what it's called, and they don't make them anymore. Although I know a guy who's trying to make some. So
maybe this year they'll actually have.
Yeah. So if they come out with them, great. But until then, you guys, and they're pretty expensive. Like I said, being a professional, you can't cheap out on equipment. So you gotta.
Yeah.
And I have 3 of them, so
Wow. Okay.
They go. I have a backup because, like I said, I'm cutting. I have a timeline. I have to cut stuff up, and if if my machine breaks down, I don't have an excuse. I have a backup here, and I just jump on that next machine and keep going. So there's no reason I can't produce. Unless I run out of, we lose power. That's my only good excuse. But
then you got to hook it up to a bike and just start pedaling.
Lose some weight. Yeah. So
okay. So next question, do you have any tips on how to switch from diagrams to just cutting? We sort of talked about this, but maybe you can go deeper.
I would say try it first of all. Just jump heads in and try it. I honestly, to answer this question really accurately, I would say get a gemstone that needs to be recut and not really heavily damaged, not a huge chip to where you're really doing big alterations, but just get a gemstone and you notice the meat points aren't good or the polish isn't good or whatever, and start finding every facet on there and manipulating them to where you're getting good meat points, you're getting the polish, and write down what you do. That's essentially cutting without a diagram, except you have a stone to work off of. You have, a visual idea of what's going on. And you don't need to care about the stone so much. You care about the process. So I would say do that numerous times and you'll start to see that there's a pattern to it and it'll make sense. and then you can wholly, go over and start to try it on a piece of rough. So that would be, I would think, a good way to do it. Or hook up with a guy like me and get lessons and spend a lot of time and work through all the problems and learn it that way too. So
Yeah.
but there's a few ways to go about doing it, but it is a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, and it's not going to happen easy. So
but perfect time to start, because we're in the middle. Maybe we're still, I don't know how you guys are, but we're still in the middle of a lockdown. So
okay,
we're just at home. Best time to be cutting. Why not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Experience is more valuable than money, folks. So cut.
Okay, so next question. This is coming from Dennis McGillivray. He said, do you think being a carpenter gave you an eye for what looks correct without measuring and setting out? Do you think that helped out?
I think it did, actually, because as a carpenter, I was kind of known as like a really good roof guy, as a framer. And I could see, I could look at blueprints, which is just like looking at a diagram. And essentially, we're putting just tiny little roofs on little things, right? So I think that actually really helped my spatial reasoning and understanding how planes worked in and all that kind of stuff. So I certainly think it did help quite a bit, actually. And just with spatial reasoning and being able to read blueprints, which got me into diagram cutting and on and on. So, yeah.
Okay. So Barry, I should have asked this one at the last time. Barry Johnson asked, where does one obtain recut material? So if you want to do what you just said, how do you even find that stone?
Literally everything on eBay is recut material. It doesn't matter what if it's a synthetic ruby or a garnet or whatever. Buy commercially cut stones and start recutting them and learning, what they did and learning how to make your machine do what you want it to do. It's really, like I said, it's really just, you're in the matrix, you become one with the machine, and you can just get it to go exactly where you want. And recutting really, really, really speeds up that process. So, yeah.
Okay. This is a question I like that kind of jumps off the back of that one. Do you think, does it make sense to master step cuts before taking on the recuts? He's saying for him, this is Martin Prinsloo saying for him, the step cut is kind of a different discipline than the brilliant cut, which I would also agree with.
Yeah. The step cut is much more manipulatable. And what I mean by that is, a brilliant cut, you have to be centered, centered on the stone. I'm talking the culet or the pavilion of the stone. You have to be centered. A step cut, you can go off to the side, and which most of them are, especially on expensive stones. They're way off to the side. The whole pavilion, will be just a weird cone off, and you can manipulate the step cut around it. So step cuts are very tricky especially on like ovals and things. They look really basic, and you're like, oh, it's just a step cut, no problem. Believe it or not, there's a hell of a lot of math and understanding that needs to go in to get nice even lines around and relatively same spaced, steps as you go up. It's really difficult. And if you can figure out an oval really well on a step cut, I gotta tell you, you're doing really good. You're doing really good, because those are difficult stones to figure out. So so use that, and pear shapes too kind of have the same problem. You have the different, once you start ratioing things out, they get much, much more difficult. So, practice, practice. So, yeah.
I know for me, when people usually get out of our class and they're like, well, what should I do next? I'm like, do an emerald cut, because we don't do that in the class. I was like, emerald cut is a great exercise. It'll also tell you if your machine's out of balance or not, because the barrel's all messed up.
But emerald cuts, again, they look really easy, but you can get off in the weeds really quick with them if you don't understand how everything's moving and what's going on with your machine and everything. So
plus those long facets can quickly start tilting over. Sometimes I mean, you can cut a brilliant cut on a really messed up machine and might not even notice that things are out of balance, but as soon as you get a rectangle with parallel lines, those parallel lines look bad quick.
Like I said, it's an eye-opener. An emerald cut really exposes all the flaws with your machine. If you have a dished lap or something like that, boom, you see it instantaneously when you do a really nice long facet. So they really, accentuate those problems. So yeah.
Okay, this is from Alex Edwards. I actually had the same question. Do you have customers sign any kind of release form in case something goes wrong?
Okay, sort of. I do. I have a form that I have people fill out before they send me work. So I kind of know it's how I control my workflow and everything. On the back of that, on the very end of that, I have a legal document that says, I'm allowed to take images of your thing and use them as I see fit. And they can click yes or no to that. But, and so, that's for, me documenting it, not only for my own self, but I can use it on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. But also, I have them sign saying that something that I'm not responsible for anything catastrophic that happens to your stone, but I am responsible if I screw something up. So in other words, if I drop an emerald and it falls on concrete and breaks, that's my bad. And I have to fess up to that and say, I could say, oh yeah, it just broke while I was cutting it and lie, but that's again, I protect my reputation. I'd say, you know what? I was a bonehead and I dropped it on the ground and I broke it. I'll get you a new one. So if it really, really is my fault that I screwed up, I will own up to it every time. But there's some stones that, they're highly, fractured emeralds and things. And I sit there and say, you know what, this one could go really well and it could not. And that's where you have to have the experience and the communication with the client and let them know that, hey, this has a very good chance of becoming fish tank gravel, but I'll do my best. And I haven't lost a stone yet. I tell them that, which is true. I haven't destroyed a stone by trying to cut it. Yeah. So you just got to communicate with your client and let them know exactly what's going on. And you got to be really precise with that. So,
yeah. Okay. Same questionnaire, asking another interesting question. How do you check the stones before cutting to make sure what the jewelers say that they are? And has that ever been an issue where you had to handle that?
It happened just like a week ago. I had a client got a gemstone appraised. It was an 18 karat sapphire. And the appraiser said, wow, this is a great stone, but it needs a recut. And so they suggested me. So they sent me the stone to get recut. I check every single stone that comes in as being what they say it is. Well, I looked at this beautiful 18 karat stone that was all abraded. And the first red flag was it was calibrated, which a big stone like that's never going to be a calibrated size. And secondly, it was kind of had like some weird, like lighter areas, which is not for sapphires. It's it looks a little different. So it just gave me a few red flags. So I threw it on the microscope. Sure enough, I see curved striation, which means it's a synthetic. Now, here's the problem. If I wouldn't have checked and I would have just cut that stone and sent it back to them, they sent me in their brain an authentic sapphire. I sent them back a synthetic sapphire. They could sue me for lots and lots of money saying I switched out the stone. So I always, always, always check because I'm responsible for not only, I don't care, if the jeweler's great and I've done business with them every single time, but I'm responsible for every stone that I work on. And this one, I just said, it's synthetic. It's not worth me cutting. It's literally going back in the mail right now. And I stopped everything and sent that right back. So there's not even a time frame for me to cut it or anything. It's like on paper, if I were to get sued for some reason, it's like, look, I had this stone for 13 minutes and it was back out the door. What could I have done? So you have to protect yourself, and that's education and information. You are responsible to protect yourself. Don't expect anybody to be looking out for you on that level. So you have to do that.
Good point. Really good point. One of the things that we don't worry about too much here in Bangkok, but I always imagine in America, everybody's so sue crazy. I'm just like, man, I really wonder how this works. So thanks for enlightening us. That was really good to know. Okay. Sawara Khalil asks, how many designs can you cut without using diagrams?
Every design that's ever been thought of or will be thought of in the future, I can cut right now. There's no limit. I can cut every single thing I can think of. So if I can see it in my head or in real life, I can make a duplicate of it. So,
okay. Good answer.
When you
Okay.
cut without a diagram, you have the world is your oyster, baby.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay. Final question of tonight. This is probably maybe the most important question.
okay.
M&Ms or peanut M&Ms?
Oh man, that is tough. At least it wasn't Mountain Dew or Dr. Pepper.
Wait, that's the
That was a
second
lot
half. We're
easier.
not there yet.
Oh,
It's a two-parter.
okay. Um, I actually love peanut M&Ms. But that's the adult me. But if I have, I have lots of good memories of drinking Mountain Dew and eating regular plain M&Ms as a teenager. So kind of depends on what my mood is. If I'm,
Yeah.
feeling
Feeling
all
nostalgic.
nostalgic, I'll go
Yeah.
get some plain M&Ms and have dinner.
Simple things. Okay, part
Yeah,
two.
yeah.
He
Okay.
by the way, this is Eric Bardowell. He wants
Oh,
you
okay.
to rank Coca-Cola, Diet Mountain Dew, and water. Rank them.
What's the question,
Like
Eric?
rank them 1, 2, or 3. Most important, I guess. Coca-Cola, Diet Mountain Dew, water. What order for
They're
you?
all negative threes. Terrible, terrible.
I see already you're a regular Mountain Dew guy for
I
breakfast.
I I'm good.
Anytime.
I'm
Anytime.
good. I
Anytime.
have a Mountain Dew. I'm gonna be okay. So
Well, Boyd, it was a pleasure to just pick your brain for a while. And, you know, as I said, I'm always interested in what other professional cutters are doing, but especially other American cutters, because it's such a unique world that's not like my world here in Bangkok or the world of Europe that I often immerse myself in. So, I appreciate the stories and the answers for the questions. It was fun.
I'm glad I could help. And if anybody has any other questions or anything, feel free to message me. I'm here honestly to help you, and I want every cutter to succeed in whatever they're doing, and I'll do what I can to help. So I'm available for anybody that might need me for anything. So
Cool.
I'm always happy to help.
And so,
And I appreciate Justin. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity. Of course,
It's fun, it's cool to get to know, for me in Bangkok, it's hard to get to know people from so far away sometimes. So the webinar has been a
right.
pretty fun way to say hi. I'm hoping
Yeah.
are you going to be in Tucson this coming year?
Yeah, this year for sure. Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to be there too. So we'll say hi in Tucson.
Yeah.
For anybody who's not following Boyd, his stuff's up on the screen, Instagram, Facebook, and you can message him there that way, I guess, right? Is that the best way?
Yeah.
Cool.
However you want to get a hold of me is fine. So
okay. Yeah. And so for everybody watching, I'm going to be back next month, July 11th. We're going to be going to Australia. And for anybody who has been following my social media, you know that my book's available. This is the last week. Friday's the last day. So get it while it's hot. Otherwise, you're going to have to wait until the end of the year. Okay, that's it for me. Gemcutting Conversations. Thank you again, Boyd. And thanks to all the great questions from the audience. We'll see you next time.
See you around.
Catch you later.
All right. See you.
Bye-bye.